Okay, so last time, was talking about how it was difficult to actually learn art, and talked about the difficult. Last time I talked about the difficulties of learning art, and this time I'm actually going to talk about how to make progress as an artist. So, let me just read my notes here. So first thing I want to say is there's no point in making any progress if you can't measure it. So you have to be able to know what has changed, or you're just relying on blind faith. And it's kind of demotivating when you work really, really hard and do exercise and stuff, and you don't actually see any real progress, and you just kind of, are you supposed to say, well, I guess I'm making progress? So that's not very helpful, and it doesn't put you on like a good continual path to making good progress. And the opposite's true, right? It's like when you can really say, oh man, this is really a lot different. This is like, something has definitely changed. This is like a whole lot easier than it was, a minute ago. That is when you have measurable progress that, you get. So again, it's going to be one of those episodes where, again, I'm mostly talking. You can go audio only. You don't have to watch everything. Except maybe towards the end when I actually do show something. But yeah, not really a drawing episode, more of a philosophy, a learning philosophy video. So, progress is kind of this thing where it's like you got to be able to see how you're getting closer to your goal, right? You have to be able to say, well, I got this much closer to my goal, right? It's like I'm almost there, and I'm the measurable thing, right? And so that's what I mean is that progress requires a goal. It's not just I got better at art. You have to have some sort of goal within that, and it's about the progress is about the actual change. It's not, as much as it is about an absolute. What I mean by this is that when people talk about, am I good at drawing, right? It's like, I'm a good artist, right? That is kind of like this absolute. It's like, I'm at the goal, right? I am here. Whereas progress is about saying, well, I got this much better than I was a moment ago. I got this much closer to my goal. So, I think that people, by and large, want to be good artists yesterday. They want to be good artists like right now, Diddy Mao. They want to be really fast. They want to be, really good. But that's what I mean is that being the good artist is an absolute, right? Whereas you need to be able to say, well, I got to get a little closer. I got to get somewhere. I've got to be able to make this much progress. So, when it comes to making an actual goal, right? So that's what I mean. Progress requires a goal, and the only way that you can really set, if you're going to set a goal, and you can track the achievement of that goal, or tracking your proximity to that goal, that's only possible when you really know where you are. You need to know where you are in terms, like how far you are from your goal. You got to know where you'd like to be, which is you have to know, what is the ideal situation? What is the ideal artist that I want to be, right? So you got to know where you are, where you'd like to be, and you got to know all the stops along the way. So really what happens is that goal of being, where you want to be, right? You got to think of all the little stops along the way that you got to make. Because sometimes it's not a like single, like it's not just like I do this thing and now I'm suddenly a great artist, right? It's like it doesn't happen that quickly. It's just like whenever you may have to make a flight around the world. Sometimes it's not, a one way. It's not a single stop flight, like a no stop flight. In this case, you may actually have to make several different interchanges, right? It's like getting good at drawing is more like the Tokyo subway system than it is, getting a single flight to Tokyo. So it's more like the Tokyo subway system. You're gonna have to make a whole bunch of interchanges and pass through a whole bunch of stops to get where you want to be. So, when it comes to these goals, they've got to be something tangible. Got to be something tangible. And so whenever you have, it's got to be actionable. Meaning, like, you got to be able to say, well, I have to do this thing. Then that brings me closer, right? So anytime you have something which is actionable, it's a task, and you may have, many tasks that you have to perform to get to that particular goal. And when it comes to a task, right? Like some people look at exercises as these tasks. They think, well, if I just if I just shovel this much dirt, I'm this much better. If I just do the exercise, I'll just get, okay, good, the exercise is done, and now I'm there. It's like, no. It's like, it's not enough to just do the task. You have to actually grade the execution of the task. You got to say, how well did you do that task? You have to be able to get that, the grade of that task. You have to be able to get the grade of the execution of the task up to a level where it's satisfactory, where it's usable, where you will actually use it. So, it means that you don't just look at, when you're grading a task, right? Like if I say we're going to be drawing circles or we're going to be drawing straight lines, it's not just, well, I drew a bunch of nice, good circles and that's the end result, right? The end result is we have some nice circles and therefore we're done. It's like, no. You actually have to look at not just the end result, you have to actually look at the actual performance of the doing of the task. So when I talk about the performance, this is like the performing arts, right? If you get up on stage and you tell a joke, you might have said all the right lines. You might have gotten, did the whole setup and the punchline and everything. But, it's just, you might have gotten the timing right and all that stuff, but somehow it just didn't deliver well, right? It's like maybe you were too nervous and your voice was off and your performance was poor, right? And maybe people could just tell that you were off your game. And, this is the thing, is that when it comes to being good at a thing, to being able to have really usable skills, you need to be able to not just execute them well, but you need to be able to perform. You got to be able to do you have to have a good performance. You have to be able to perform them well. And the reason for needing good performance is that it's like I say, right? It's like the performance is about how well you felt when you did it, because it's not just about being good at a thing, right? It's not just like I said that you have to, that being good at art is not just about being able to do many things, but it's about being able to mesh all the different things that you can do. And you cannot mesh two different skills together if you can't perform them well, right? So performance includes being able to kind of dovetail these two things that you do, right? Like the skills have to be able to support one another. They have to be able to mesh together like gears of a machine. They need to be able to drive each other and support each other. So that's why I say the performance is important. That if you can just pull off a nice circle, well then that's still not a useful skill if you can't pull that off in combination with other skills. So that's why it's so hard to just train people to do exercise. I can't just tell someone to get good at one exercise, especially they had to get to the point where they're doing these exercises as a compound thing, right? They got to be able to compound the exercises, make these compound exercises that require them to do two different skills at the same time, and they're kind of enmeshed, they're combined. So when it comes to actually grading the performance of an exercise, right? How well does a person perform an exercise? Well, then we have something I like to call the performance triangle. So if we just draw an equilateral triangle, like so, and we have, I guess I would say quality and consistency. That looks like quacity. Hang on, that's 4. There we are, quality, and then we have consistency. And then we also have range. All right. So quality, consistency, and range. And of course, we start out in the center point. That. And I'm going to just create these 3 little guidelines here. Okay. The quality is obviously, that's pretty obvious, right? It's like if I'm going to tell someone to draw circles, well, people will look at that and say, hey, that's a pretty good circle, right? It's good quality. But it's not enough to just be able to say, oh, I've drawn a good circle. Let's go for home for the day, have tea and crumpets. We're all good. No. You need to have consistency. So consistency means, well, what if I draw, another circle just like the last one? Hey, that's pretty good too. Keep going. Right? So you need to be able to have this consistency. And there's no point in just being good at drawing one circle. You're not there yet until you have consistency. Because otherwise, if you don't have consistency, it means that whenever you decide to use that circle drawing skill, or that it's not really just circle drawing skill, it's a plotting skill, right? It's being able to make the line go through the points you want, be able to generate the curves you want, and right, it's being able to have line control. If you don't have consistency, like another word for consistency is reliability. All right, and really reliability is not just consistency; it's actually consistency over a range, right? Quality and consistency over a range. So really, what I should say is quality times consistency times range. Really, all of this just comes down to reliability. Means that you can rely on this skill. Not going to let you down. Never going to give you up. Always going to be, it's always going to be something that you can rely on. It means that there's no point in having a skill if it's not reliable. You have to build the reliability of a skill. So we have that, right? And when I say a range, okay, so if I say, let's say I'm going to draw, okay, circles. Let's stick with circles. So what happens if it's a circle going, the other direction? Clockwise and counterclockwise and clockwise. What if I need those circles to be really small? What if I need them to be, kind of large? So I got to be able to handle a whole range of these circles. Gradually, increasing their size. Over a smooth range. And you'll notice that they're all touching tangentially, right? Or what if I need to do, ellipses? And again, I can get this consistency over a range, right? There's no point if you're not flexible. If you can only draw the same circle and you can't adjust the parameter of that circle. If you can't take something like this. I'm going to just touch the top, the middle, and the bottom. Right? I just handled a range just now. So I got this flexibility. That's the thing, is that my ellipse drawing skill is very reliable. So we have this one little thing, and we can say that my reliability is probably somewhere around here. Right? Then another thing in the performance trial, the next one, would be speed. Pretty simple. The faster you are at something, it's like speed is something that just comes over time. At first, you have to kind of you're going to be slow at it, but, do it right. Aim for reliability before you aim for speed. Speed is just something that comes over I won't say a lot of time. I would say that the more you do this, the more comfortable you get, and then gradually you can increase your speed, right? Speed is just something that you can't force. It just means that what will happen is that you're always going to try and get that greatest reliability. You're always going to try and get that quality, that consistency over a large range. The reliability comes first. And as you work at it, eventually, your body will just, I guess you'll just get accustomed to it. And you gradually pick up speed. And I guess there's one more thing, which would be, I would call it ease. So ease is just how easy it is. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. If you are feeling extremely tense, if there's a lot of adrenaline and cortisol running through your system when you're doing this kind of stuff, you might even have reliability. But if you don't feel really like 100% comfortable with this stuff, if you don't have the ease of it, it means that your conscious mind, which can only think of one thing, it's going to be focused on that thing you're trying to do. It's going to be focused on that skill. And when you're focused on that skill, you can't integrate. You can't integrate that skill because it requires that your mind is going to micromanage that one problem, because it's going to be sitting there at the forefront of your conscious mind. You're going to be consciously thinking about it. So my speed is pretty darn fast. All right, and I do this stuff really easily. So it means that it gives me great integration. So that means that for me, right, like when it comes to my performance of the exercise or the skill, right, I have all this. Okay, I'm right. It's all about the area of that triangle. Right, the more area you have, the stronger you are. Right, I'm pretty freaking strong when it comes to doing ellipse exercises. right? So when you start out, right, you don't have any quality and consistency and range. You might have a lot of speed, and you might have a lot of ease, but I mean that just means, that's kind of, you can see where you're lacking, right? So that is what you should consider anytime you're doing exercise. You think of this triangle, and you got to think to yourself, how reliable am I? How good's my speed? How good's my ease and integration? So, you may have, I think when you start out, you start working on the reliability. Then gradually what happens is the ease, kind of works its way in there. And maybe your speed is probably the last thing to follow, right? So this is why you do an exercise, right? Is that you got to be thinking, where are you? What's this triangle looking like? And you want to stretch that triangle out as much as you can. All right, so I would like to show you, about integration. We're just going to talk a little bit further about integration here, and just so integration is when you start meshing a bunch of different skills together. And I'm going to show you. I don't know. I'm going to call it the 90-degree clock. So the 90-degree clock is something I use when I'm drawing boxes a lot, because if you anytime you look at a cube, right, the cube or a box or anything like that, all of the corners, all of the angles on it are 90 degrees. Like they're spatially 90 degrees. When you look at them though, right, if you look at a cube like this, it doesn't look 90 degrees when you're looking at it kind of from this isometric perspective. Right? It might look like it's 90 degrees when you're looking at it straight on. And all these things kind of change depending, entirely on your vantage point. Okay. So when I talk about the 90 degree clock, I know that this is a 90-degree angle, but I'm looking at it kind of at a weird angle. And if we zoom in on this thing and we draw a circle over it, kind of looks, well, like a clock. This is why I call it the 90-degree clock, because it's the 90-degree angle, and depending on when you look at it, it's gonna show different, there's kind of a different angle here. The clock is going to change. So I put together this little demonstration in Unity. Here we are. To illustrate the 90-degree clock, I took a cube, and on 3 of the corners, I've actually created these little indicators here. So these green sweeps that you see, right? Let's just look at, say, the bottom one, for instance. Now, you'll probably notice that the green sweep on that bottom one gets wider and wider and wider as I become as my view gets more and more coplanar with that face, right? You can really see, right? If I look at that thing straight up and down, it becomes 90 degrees. As I move down, it starts to get wider and wider and wider and wider and wider until it is 180 degree spread. Then it starts to get narrower and narrower and narrower until it's once again 90 degrees. Now we look at the purple sections here. The opposite is happening. They start to get narrower and narrower as we become more and more coplanar. And then when we're looking at the thing straight on, it goes back to 90, right? So there's this analysis that goes on, this kind of 90-degree clock that's going on. And we can see with this red line and this blue line, right, there is the clock angle. All right, here's another thing that's kind of cool, is that with this particular face, I've told it to draw a surface normal. That is a line that comes at 90 degrees perpendicular to this elliptical plane. And what happens is that so long as wherever this white arrow is, if this white arrow crosses over, now it's in the purple section. And as our view becomes more and more coplanar, you'll see that because this white arrow is sitting in the purple section is now getting wider as the view becomes more and more coplanar with it. And the opposite is happening for the green sections. The reason why this is happening is because, or the reason why when one thing gets larger and the others get smaller is because, well, you've got 360 degrees, so if you're going to add to this section and this section, which the line is within, if it's within that sweep, it's going to add to that, but we have to subtract from these two in order to come up with full 360. Right, so anytime I move over, right, here we are, I've now breached over into here, that's the one that gets wider. So you can always tell as you move downward, right, how that angle is going to get wider and wider and wider. And you can see the same thing happening on these other two, right, like that. You can see it getting wider. If I breach over, now you see that the green sweeps are getting narrower and narrower and narrower. And anytime you're looking at a sweep that is 90 degree, you know that you're looking at it straight on. You're looking at it in a perpendicular fashion as opposed to a tangential fashion. You can really see that. And whenever the line's like straight up and down like that, right, you can really see how it's just staying pretty much 90 degrees all the time because I'm like in line with that. So all of this kind of forms this little hexagon in here, and then inside you have an internal set of edges, right? This little guy here, and you can again see that there is a 90-degree clock. The 90-degree clock can be visible on any internal corner, just as it can be seen on external corners, right? All of these corners here have the 90-degree clock on them whenever you're looking at a cube. So this is like deep cube analysis or deep, any kind of box. This is like deep box analysis. And so you've got this internal corner. Now, a few other things, that the internal corner is going to be closer to you. It's going to be the closest corner to you at all times. Meanwhile, these corners here have 3 lines that go to them, right? So there's the internal corner, then this one has a line that goes here, goes to it, that one goes into it, that one goes into it. That means that any of these corners, which have 3 edges, 3 visible edges, they're going to be the second closest. And the ones which only have 2 visible edges are going to be the furthest from you, right? This is closest, that's furthest, these are kind of in the middle. And as I turn this thing over, right, now we have a crossover point, crossing over. And now we can see that these have 3 visible edges. They're kind of tied for closeness or proximity. This has only 2 visible edges, so they're further away. And then as we turn this, watch, there's a flip over point here. Now we have formed an internal corner here. You've got that one only has 2 visible edges, and so that is furthest away. This one has 3 connected visible edges, so this is closer. This is the closest point. That's the internal corner. So anytime you're looking at boxes, you have to understand that there's going to be 3 kinds of corners. Actually, 4 kinds. The 4th kind is way back there, and it is hidden. The hidden corner. And it is going to be the very, very furthest corner of the box. But as you can see, you can really tell that this is the closest corner. These guys are second closest or mid-range. These are going to be the furthest one. So I've now explained to you the relationship of how these angles change depending on your vantage point on the cube. So let's apply that in drawing. So that means that if I ever draw a 90 degree like that, it means that I know that I'm looking straight on at that cube. And I can just do point and point, point and point. I'm just changing the clock. Like that. So any of this can be used to create sweeping boxes very easily. You can just kind of see that. This is just a 90-degree sweep. So I can just, by creating two lines. Like, this is the power of just making 2 lines. Any 2 lines I make with a sweep angle like that. And also the length matters. So if I make it really long like that, what that does is that suggests that there's going to be another one like that. That's the power of being able to use this whole kind of 90-degree sweep. So this is one skill, but then I've got other skills that I'm using at the same time. Like just being able to draw a line which goes out and goes to a specific point and comes back, right? These are straight lines. This is just the ability to control your line. This is a plotting skill. So this is just straight line plotting. Straight line plotting means that you can take any 2 points, right? Touch, 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 and then you can connect them with reasonable accuracy. There's always diminishing returns. So you get it to the point of acceptable diminishing returns, and I can just pretty much make any lines go wherever I want them to. So I've trained a lot of these exercises where I can just make the line go wherever I want it to. I'm very comfortable with it, and it means that whenever I decide to start using that skill, I can start, whenever I decide I want to do the angle clocks, right? The 90-degree angle clocks. I can just call up that skill. I don't have to think about the problems of plotting because that stuff just comes to me really, really naturally. That allows me to integrate with that other skill. And then it means that if I decide, I want to use this skill for drawing any kind of vehicles, or if I want to draw, let's say, a room, I can begin to draw like a big box room, kind of like that. All right, so we have, and my understanding of the 90-degree clock also allows me to do fisheye perspectives. I'm going to just slightly bow these outwards. And now I can start placing. Again, this is all 90-degree clock. 90-degree clockwork. I'm going to extend that there. There's my internal. I can subdivide and extrude. Again, everything, single one of these is just, two lines comes together. Like, it's really easy for me to just take this one big cubic room space, this one, box-like room space, and just keep subdividing it, and then boom, 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 boom. Right? This stuff comes to me really naturally, but it wouldn't come to me naturally if I didn't work up all those other skills and get them to the point where I, filled out the whole performance triangle. So that's how you make, this is how you make measurable progress in your art, right? Is that when you do exercises, you got to look for a way to make skill useful to you, and you got to be or useful or usable. And unless you have that reliability and you have the speed, because don't forget, like, mental images are very, very fleeting. You might have an image in mind. You might have a character that's got a certain look, certain feel. You need to have enough speed that you can capture it before the idea goes away. Because the whole thing about art is articulation. It is the articulation of thought, the articulation of ideas, of feelings. It means that we are doing the whole lightning in a jar thing. We're going to take some lightning, we're going to freeze it in a jar. We're going to freeze it in line. We're going to take any brief idea. We freeze these things for posterity, and then they can be shared with other people. But if you don't have the speed, you're not going to be able to catch it fast enough. You need speed. You need reliability. You need that speed. You need the ease as well, because if you don't have the ease, then you're going to be too focused on the doing of the skill, and you're not going to be thinking about the idea that you want to capture. So if you think about that triangle, the more you stretch that triangle, the wider your capture net, the easier it is to capture the non-technical things. You need to have that really, really good, strong technical base, and not just with one skill, with as many skills as possible. You want to acquire these skills as many as possible, and you want to really stretch that net wide. Anyway, you know what you got to do? Get to work.